All right, we're going to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission, local planning agency. This is October 11th, 2022. We're going to do the call of order. We're going to do the invocation of the pledge. Everybody stand. Lord, thank you for this day. Lord God, thank you for everything you do for us. Please protect all of our citizens, all of our first responders, and all of our staff. Lord, in Jesus' name we pray, amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Chair Lomnick.
Here.
Vice Chair Kennedy.
Here.
Member Mellon.
Here.
Member Williams. Here. Member Forges.
Here.
Member Keller.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of September 13th?
I'll make that motion.
Second? Anybody?
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve by Member Mellon and a second by Member Williams. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have no old business. New business. This is a variance request for Dollar Tree, Family Dollar Tree at 1531 East Silver Star Road, VR 2207. This was continued from August 30th. We have zoning manager Whitfield.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a variance request for an increase in sign size for the Family Dollar Tree Combinations retail store. The question before the commission is whether or not to approve a variance to allow an additional 80 square feet of sign area representing a 108% increase in sign size to the max 75 square feet in order to allow the installation of two signs totaling 155.8 square feet for the Family Dollar and Dollar Tree store. I will point out that this slide shows it as 8-6A. The reason being is that when we started the application, the sign code had not gone through the commission yet for the reorganization. So it was previously advertised as 6-14 for this meeting. So I left it in the slide, but ultimately the recommendation will be to 8-6. So the property is located in the southwest corner of Silver Star and Clark Road. It's about 12.8 acres in size. It's zone C2. The retail store is going into a portion of the old Winn-Dixie store. And the site currently has a sign permit, two sign permits totaling 59 square feet between the two signs. This is an aerial of the property, the surrounding zoning districts. This slide just shows the current 8-6A wall signs standard. The combination store is approximately 22,000 square feet, so it'll fall under the less than 25,000 square feet sign size capped at 75 square feet in size and 3.5 feet in height, sign height. The proposed signs meet that height minimum or maximum requirement, but they're asking to go for a larger sign area. So with that, they are seeking a variance. The criteria for evaluating a variance are that there are special circumstances that exist peculiar to the property, that a literal interpretation would deprive the applicant's rights commonly enjoyed by other properties, that the circumstances are not the result of the applicant, and that granting the variance will not confer any special privileges to this applicant or property owner. So this is the aerial again, and this slide you'll see the two signs. Signs A and B are the two wall signs. There are other signs that are monument signs or directory signs directing traffic into the shopping plaza, one on Clark and also one on Silver Star Road. This is the graphics that the applicant team provided. So the Family Dollar Tree, the max is 75, and what they're proposing is 72 square feet for the Family Dollar and 83 square feet for the Dollar Tree. The justification that the applicant team provided was based on AASHTO's decision site distance. I pulled this from the AASHTO guide, and basically there are two types of distance for for stopping. So if you guys may not be aware, the AASHTO is a DOT manual that gives guidance on design speeds and road conditions and safety relative to roadway travel. 3.13 speaks to site distance, decision site distance. Prior to getting to decision site distance, there's a stopping distance. Stopping distance is just basic being on the road. Decision site distance is more enhanced time period or distance from where the driver is to where that perceived safety maneuver location is. So, for example, if more distance is needed between a light or an intersection to where the driver is to evaluate road hazards or changing speeds or changing conditions in the roads. Some examples that the AASHTO guide provided was like interchanges and toll plazas or concentration areas or construction zones and things like that. So staff feels that the road conditions on East Silver Star at that intersection don't really fall under this decision site distance criteria. In looking at the criteria, what that document said was about 900 feet to have a good decision site distance. So what I provided in this aerial is 933 feet is from the entrance off of Silver Star Road, which points directly to where the store location is. If you were to apply the decision site distance, if you can see, I think my mouse just disappeared, right here. The end of the line past Olympus Drive would be where signage would essentially, that the driver's there, and then the signage would be here, so 933 feet. The distance from this driveway going into the traffic signal is a distance of about 700 feet. So that's just information. We don't feel that the use of AASHTO is a valid justification when we're speaking of building signs. It probably could make sense for monument signs that are at the street, not so much for the building. You will have already had to slow down a little bit to approach the driveway and also to approach the traffic signal, and you will see the building to the shopping plaza to the right. This is a picture taken earlier this week of the current building. This is taken right at the entranceway on Silver Star, and you can see the Family Dollar and Dollar Tree, which are currently operating. People are visiting it. They know that that is there. And the permit that was issued, like I said, is for 59 square feet. And both of those signs are visible from Silver Star. We also looked at some of the previous signs that were approved in this shopping plaza, looking at the other tenants, both tenants facing Clark and tenants facing Silver Star, from as far back as 2011 to 2021. All the signs that we've approved so far have been compliant with 8-6. They're below they're either at or below the maximum sign size. So based on that, staff finds that there are no special conditions or circumstances that exist. A literal interpretation would not deprive this applicant, a property owner, of the ability to provide signage that would get people to the store. We feel that granting the variance would be conferring special privileges to this retailer, and that the circumstances are that of the applicant. They just want a much larger sign than what everybody else has. Again, the justification using decision site distance along 438 is not valid. There is a monument sign, directory sign there now, where this retailer has one panel for Family Dollar and one panel for the Dollar Tree, and both of those sign permits have also been issued. The proposed building signage is immediately visible from East Silver Star, and then other tenants with less visibility are code compliant. I know that the first time we advertised this hearing was August 30th, and if this commission will recall, there was a gentleman who spoke against it because of the concern for visual clutter for the shopping center. I do want to just make that reminder. I forgot to put it in this slide. So with that, staff would recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend denial of the requested variance to what is now Section 8-6A of Article 8, which is the sign code, and not allow the additional 80 square feet in addition to the 75 permitted square feet, totaling 155 square feet. Instead, we would propose that the commission recommend a sign permit modification to take the signs from 59 square feet to the 75 square feet to give them additional square footage. If they wanted, they could be code compliant that way. And the representative is here, and I believe he also likes to speak. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So, a couple quick questions for staff. We denied Ladybug, right? When Ladybug came up, we denied Ladybug. Same thing?
I don't know, but I can find out. I wasn't here.
We did. It was the same thing. And I know in that plaza alone, when Frank's Place changed to front row, they had to also lower their signage as well on the other side of that. So with that said, I'll open up to staff, or questions to staff. Okay.
Well,
Yes.
Are the signs that are there now?
Yes, sir.
Do they meet code?
Yes.
Okay.
Follow up to that, they meet code, but they still have room to be.
They have room to be a little bit bigger. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Question. When you said staff didn't agree with the applicant on this Ash 2, where did you start to disagree in this chain? It says the applicant asserts that the State Road 438 is an urban road. You agreed with that, and you got into that chapter, and then you just disagreed on the decision site distance versus the stopping site distance? That's where you split with the applicant's point of view?
In terms of the road classification, I don't disagree with the type of road that it is. We are a city going into 50,000 population, so we are a growing city, and we are trying to be more urban, and that corridor is more urban, that I agree with. But what I don't agree with is using not only site distance, a measure that is designed for traffic safety on the road within the realm of the public right-of-way as justification for a wall sign in a building in a shopping plaza. That plus secondarily, not only just bypassing stopping distance, but a decision site distance, which warrants a more environment that requires more lead time for that decision-making to happen, like at interchanges or toll plazas where there's a lot of movement and visual noise happening. I don't see that here at this intersection.
All right, the applicant would like to come up?
Right here.
Yeah, just state your name and your address.
Your mic is on now.
Thank you very much. My name is Jim Herney, and I am the Director of Communications at Anchor Sign in Charleston, South Carolina. My home address is 866 Island Park Drive, and that's in Daniel Island, South Carolina, just a suburb of Charleston. So thank you for the opportunity. And before I start, I noticed we've had to reschedule this hearing twice. Part of the second time is on me. Today is my 38-year anniversary of being a juvenile diabetic. It was the day after my 12th birthday, so that means yesterday was my 50th birthday. So, yep, excited about that, so I'm glad to be here. So sorry about that. Last meeting was some diabetes issues, so I apologize, but I'm happy to be here, so thank you. And typically, I always come in and say, I'm from beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, but if anybody hasn't seen this view off the back, this is a great place to work. It is a gorgeous community, so thank you again for the opportunity. Now, as I go through this, I just want to say you all have the toughest job. Local government is far more difficult. I spent 10 years on Capitol Hill, worked for 3 U.S. senators. I used to think I was the most important person in the world, but then I realized that local government's a little bit more difficult. You have to go to the supermarket, you walk around, people complain. Yeah, it's a lot easier in DC to just not answer the phone, so thank you for allowing me to come here and talk about signage, which is a really exciting issue, I know. And this is actually a perfect picture. You know, the signs are up. The Dollar Tree opened up. By the way, this is a Dollar Tree Family Dollar. This is one of the very few in the United States. There used to be two separate companies. They merged. They still carried on the same brand, but now they're coming together. And so this will be one of the very first ones in Florida. It's to bring both stores in, to bring both kind of customers into the store. So you have both signs here under that large store. But the picture here, I think, is a touch misleading. If you're looking at the signage here, you've missed the entry to the driveway. Okay, that's a better view. But if you go back just to where we were just a minute ago, so I think this is not misleading in a sense, but yes, those are the current signs. But at this point, you've passed. The previous picture you just had up, I think, is a really good description of what the one you just had up a minute ago, ma'am. Thank you. You know, Family Dollar and Dollar Tree, if you're looking for the store, you know where they are. No doubt about it. There isn't necessarily a need from a commerce standpoint for larger signs. People who are looking for Family Dollar or looking for Dollar Tree know where it is. The issue I always raise when talking about this company is how to be a good steward in the community. So if you don't know the stores there, but you happen to see it or come into it late, what we try to avoid is that kind of traffic issue. This intersection, I've not seen many like this. This entry driveway where the roads crisscross is a complex intersection. Now, if you live here, probably not. But if you're traveling through the area, it is a bit complicated. And I think, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but there should be a new submittal that we sent on our way with a little bit of what the larger signs look like. The city has done a great job reviewing the analysis of the safety. That picture right there. So that front elevation north on the left-hand side, the proposed 38 inches, that is as if you're coming, that's coming outside the McDonald's. I've got the Bank of America behind me, but that's a picture that I took just as that you can begin to take that left into the Family Dollar, Dollar Tree parking lot. You can look at what's there currently, the existing 24 inches, and look at what is proposed. Now, yes, it's outside the code, but from a safety standpoint, not necessarily to attract new business, but from a safety standpoint, it gives the drivers a little bit more room to see that coming forward. Now, what I will say, spending some time here in the community, it's my third visit to the store. I have been absolutely impressed with a couple of things. First, the red light cameras are tremendous. Traffic is good. I was here late one night I got in at 1:30 or 2 in the morning from Charleston, and I noticed a really good late night police presence. I thought everything was clean. It looked great. It's a great looking community. We have a number of our current clients here, Racetrack and a few others, and it's an impressive southern city. And so I can understand the need and the want to keep code regular. Right, and I heard there was an individual who was here previously to talk about sign clutter. One of the things about Anchor Sign, we do work for Amazon, Bank of America, Home Depot, Chick-fil-A, Krispy Kreme, Darden, and Dollar Tree. And what you get from us are not different color signs, different color lights, different color vinyls. You get a built 3M warranty with the proper LEDs put up in the right way. They're even. You're not necessarily looking at sign clutter, but you're looking at a well-put-together manufactured item on a building, which again is outside of code. Now, I noticed in the previous pictures about the others that are up in the plaza. I didn't see the subway up there. The subway has got multiple sides. It's a little bit larger. But again, for this community, I was in there earlier today. I saw parents pulling up, getting kids, getting subs. What we would like to do is make sure that we have the opportunity to have a little bit larger signage, not asking for more brightness, any of that, so that if you're coming west, which the Florida Department of Transportation says is I think it's 14,000 cars a day are coming on that west traffic side, and then if you're coming east, you're definitely getting a little bit more view to turn right into the parking lot. If you're coming left, you're coming westbound down Silver Star, you're able to take that left inside the plaza. The last point I'll raise, as I know I'm jumping around, but the last part I'll raise is the multi-tenant panels are small. The one on the entrance is right at the entrance to the plaza. You're going to see that as you're passing the entryway. Now, if you're coming down Clark Road, there's a multi-tenant panel sign there, not an issue. I don't think the signs necessarily need to be big for anybody coming on Clark. This is that Silver Star Road that we're talking about. And like I said, Dollar Tree's got the signs up. We're not asking for bigger signs for commerce to get more people in. People will know where Dollar Tree and Family Dollar is. The worry I often raise is coming into this community, if you're not necessarily aware of it, being able to have a little bit more sightline to it. And again, I've got the specs to the signs. I think it's in your packet. They are all within code in terms of lighting, in terms of quality, in terms of the vinyls. It's very well done, and I would think it'd be a nice addition to the plaza. And I would ask for, just happy to answer some questions, but also if the committee would get the sense of our need for public safety and an opportunity to review that code for this one particular site. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I've got one if I can.
Sure.
And I suppose I'm going to be picky here, so I apologize.
Yes, sir.
ahead of time. But I do notice one thing, and I would be curious, actually, let me turn this back on so you can hear me. I do notice one thing, and I would be curious what the difference would be if the pictures were the same size. The 36-inch has a bigger picture,
Right.
and so it makes that stand out a little bit more. Because you got the 24-inch as a smaller picture, it makes the sign look smaller as well. Those two pictures that you had
Yeah.
up just before.
Absolutely.
Yeah, see, that, to me, that 20, I mean, it's good marketing. I do exactly the same thing there. But, but I did notice that it was done. I'd be curious how much of a difference it would look like if both of those pictures were the same size. Because I don't know that you're getting that much more bang for your buck if I see those as an equal size picture. So that would be my one question there.
And maybe this will, if I could just approach you, I've got these two drawings. This may help a little, but not. And like I did say, I did work in politics before, so I know you believe everything that I say, but your point is so well taken. This is the existing sign, same size building in the drawings, if I could say. And this is what we're asking. So you can see the slight difference. All right, so the buildings are the same size. The signs are just, it's that inch difference. Now, your point is very well taken on that sign, but if you envision the size difference, you're getting just a little bit more with that 12 inches. We're going from the 24 to the 36. That's sort of the look of it. And I can leave these here if it helps you.
Well, I was going to say, you may want to pass that on so others could take a look at it too. Just so they could see
Yes.
what you're showing me too and get their opinions as well.
So you see that this is current, it's there now. Okay, and this is the larger view, same size building in the scale. That larger view. Now, it looks larger here to you, but as you step back, you're getting a little bit more of that through the trees, which I think is over the old, maybe a credit union, I think, that's there on that corner.
Yeah.
Credit union, yep. Which I assume used to be a Bank of America, I assume.
There was a Center State.
Ocoee and something.
It was
Yeah,
Center
you can
State.
actually take it back to her and she'll put it on the,
I should have figured that out, yep. Two different ones. I will also say that
you gotta go up to the mic if you're gonna keep talking, sorry.
I was also going to mention that the state of Florida is Dollar Tree's third largest state. So it's Texas, Georgia, and Florida. So there's about 992 stores in Florida, and this will be our newest.
While they're waiting to do that, does anybody else have any other questions for the applicant? Go ahead, Jason.
Well, I know your issue is really predominantly about safety, and I know you mentioned that the signage, the monument signs are already kind of small, but that could be very easily remedied by going to the property owner and getting another, especially when you're, taking up so much residence already. You're like probably the prime, leasee. Just having a proper monument sign built that's closer to the road,
Sure.
then that would I think, solve the problem and not be the only, company within the city with a larger sign.
Well, and your point is very well taken. The multi-tenant panels are done. We have the exact same size as Subway, as the small, the landlord is not indicated has any interest in putting in a separate Dollar Tree monument. Fortunately, there's actually 3 existing multi-tenant panels. There's one closer down Silver Star, heading away from the McDonald's that's not being used. There's one at the entrance that's got all the multi-tenants. They're all the same size, including ours. And then on the one on Clark Street.
Yeah, it's not there anymore. Hurricane took it out.
Okay, yeah, well, it's missing
still
part of
there.
it
It's
today.
missing
Yeah, it's missing
panels.
part. But the Dollar Tree and Family Dollar are in there today. But you're right on that. If there was a separate Dollar Tree pylon or monument, absolutely.
All right, anybody have any other questions for the applicant? All right, we're going to open up to the public. Nobody? We're going to close the public hearing. Now, we're just going to ask if there's any other questions for staff, and I'm going to bring it back to say, I know, Enoch, I don't think you were here for Ladybug, but Ladybug brought up the same exact issues about safety and their sign on West Road, and I am 99% sure we said no to that sign, and they had to keep their smaller sign, and I believe it was even their monument sign out front as well. So, yeah, does anybody have anything else for staff?
Just to be clear, the variance requires all 4 of these conditions are met, not just any one. Is that correct?
One second.
That special conditions and circumstances,
I
et
believe
cetera, et
it's an
cetera?
and. I actually have the statutes up.
It is, okay.
I mean, not the statutes, the code.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, if there are no more questions, then I'll need a motion either way.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I will make a motion to deny the variance request for project VR 2207. Recommend denial, pardon.
We have a motion to recommend for denial. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, we have a motion to recommend for denial and a second. The motion was made by Vice Chair Kennedy and the second was by Member Williams. And I'll tell you, you had a fantastic presentation, right? But, we've been through this before and we didn't do it the last time either. So, all right, let's vote on the deal here.
Oh, yeah.
All right, it carries 5-0. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, next is going to be,
Can I make a comment
sure.
before? Officer, thank you for sharing that with us.
Put your mic on.
38 years of, we appreciate that. It means a lot to me because I have a child who's had childhood illnesses as well, so thank you for sharing that with us.
Can I ask you how old your child is, real quick?
Oh, he's 22 now, but he had a life-threatening illness when he was 14 months old.
So,
So, appreciate you sharing
when I got diabetes, it took 2 minutes to get a blood sugar, and it took days to get a A1C. Now it takes 5 minutes.
Correct.
Home technology, so it's great. And I'm glad to have made it 38 years, but that's congrats on your son.
No, thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you very much, sir.
It's encouraging.
Thank you.
Okay, so the number B has been moved, right? It's continued, okay?
We do need a motion to continue.
Yeah, so on large-scale preliminary site plan for All-Star Corporate Headquarters Project LS 2022-011, the applicant has requested the item be continued to the November 8th Planning and Zoning meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make
So
that.
moved.
We have a motion and a second. We got a motion by Member Williams and a second by Member Mellon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good to go. All right, we're on to C, Land Development Code LDC Amendment to Section 515B and Table 5.1 of Article 5 pertaining to major community residential homes and commercial recreation facilities. Zoning Manager Whitfield.
Thank you. So hopefully this will be a good conversation. The issue is, should the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the amendments to Article 5, Section 5-15B and Table 5-1 relative to major community residential homes and commercial recreation facilities. So a little bit of background. You guys all remember the Orchard Park ALF, and I shared with you all those ordinances dating back, way back when. The intent was to update the table and the section of the code. However, what was done at that time, a few years ago, was just creating the ALF application and the mapping system and GIS to make sure that we're keeping track of each of the locations as they pop up to ensure that they're meeting the minimum distance separation requirements. So what the Orchard Park ALF has taught us was that we needed to correct this discrepancy. So Table 5-1, as it has been existing for so long, allows the major community residential homes, excuse me, by right, in all the ag zonings as well as all the residential zoning districts. However, when you go to Section 5-15B3, it says that a conditional use permit is required prior to a permit being approved or a CO being issued. And the definition for conditional use directs us to special exception. 5-15B also says that as the local planning agency and the city commission considers its decision, which further suggests that it's a public hearing process, which supports the definition that it be a special exception process. So having a table that says the use is allowed by right and having a code provision that says that a special exception hearing is required is an internal conflict. So what this code amendment is proposing to do is, I'll come back to that, is to, to modify Table 5-1 to prohibit the major community residential homes in all of the single-family districts and the ag district, and then to allow them as a special exception through in just the R3 zoning districts. We did do a research of other communities. I looked at Altamont Springs, Seminole County, Castleberry, Windermere, and there was one more. But all of them basically said they put it all into the residential zoning districts. The multifamily residential zoning districts for the major. They didn't define it as major like we do. They just define it like it does in statutes. A community residential home is defined as a dwelling unit that serves 7 to 14. That's the definition of a community residential home. So all of their code references just says community residential home. And then for those that serve less than 6, it'll just say, or it said in their code references in Municode, community residential homes serving fewer than 7. So we define ours as minor and major, but is essentially speaking to the same things. The other change that staff is proposing are to change the reference to conditional use to special exception to make it clear that a special exception, and citing that section in Article 4 for process, and also adding some criteria for how each one of these come in for evaluation as a special exception in the R3. As you'll recall, the current language just says that it has to comply with multifamily standards. Because the statute defines it as one dwelling, it essentially meets all of the multifamily standards, so there really isn't a standard to evaluate it against. So using the provisions in the statutes that speaks to, and I highlighted those sections in the statute reference that I submitted, speaking to maintaining the residential character, keeping the overall use as a residential dwelling unit, and things like that. We put in there the parking provision, and similar to the home-based business, that the dwelling will still have to comply with the city's standards for residential dwellings relative to noise and lighting, litter, things like that. So that's what we're proposing for the major community residential homes to bring us more into compliance with the statutes, bring us more into compliance with our intent to protect residential neighborhoods, and it generally mirrors what some of our sister cities are doing. The next item is relative to commercial recreation facilities. This issue came up because we've received phone calls on the property at 300 North Bluford. A call was put in by someone wanting to purchase that property and put in a soccer field. So when we looked at this provision in the use table, we saw that a recreation neighborhood, which is essentially a soccer field, is meant to capture the close proximity homes, they are required to have a special exception. For one, that site's not large enough to accommodate a soccer field. This person just wanted to go and paint the lines on the grass and rent it out. No consideration for drainage, impervious, parking, lighting, buffers, nothing. So when I looked at the requirements for a commercial recreation facility, commercial recreation facilities are defined as having indoor and outdoor. Indoors, arcades, billiards, things like that. Outdoors include things like horse riding areas, driving ranges, go-karts, stables. So if that person had called and said they wanted to put in a miniature golf course or a stable, the table would allow them to do that as a use allowed by right. So what this code change is doing, since we're doing the major community residential homes, is just to, I just covered that, is to create a new designation for, or just split them out, make a distinction between indoor and outdoor, leave the indoor the way it is, and then have the outdoor be required to have a special exception, just like anything else outdoor would have, so that we can evaluate impacts to the surrounding neighborhoods and the streets. You know, we would not want to have a ball flying onto State Road 438, you know, things like that. But to protect the balls from going onto the street, we would have really tall nets that would be pretty much lining our corridors. So with this change, we would also strike miniature golf courses and driving range. That's called out as one line item in Table 5-1. So because of the change to separate out indoor and outdoor, we're proposing to strike miniature golf since it's covered under the definition for outdoor commercial recreation facilities. So with that, staff is recommending that the commission approve this change relative to major community residential homes and commercial recreational facilities. I also want to share that this is just a low-hanging fruit fix. I know that we've talked about other code changes that need to happen. That is in the woodworks. Mike has said that we do have a consultant or funding for a consultant to help us with not only the comp plan, but also the LEC update as well. So with that, that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for staff?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
I know on the first one, we're talking about the ALFs and stuff like that. I know you mentioned like Altamont Springs, Longwood, and so forth. I believe Longwood and Altamont Springs, I guess my question is can't we put more, stringent stipulations like on ALFs, since they do have this multi-use, they'll have a lot of people in there, requiring like fire alarms or fire sprinkler systems, like Altamont Springs does, with the size of the home as a safety.
Yes, so it, like in statutes and in the draft ordinance, it does speak to requiring that they meet building and fire safety requirements. So for a building code perspective, once an ALF, and you said alpha, and I'm thinking the
Sorry,
cartoon.
yeah, I know the.
Or the animation. When an ALF goes up to 5, it's a residential. So the building codes R2 classification still applies. I think it's either R2, I think it's R2. But when they go to 6, that triggers them to be more commercial in terms of fire safety and building safety. So building department reviews it as a commercial venture. Their business tax, and it goes through that route. Interestingly, when Mike and I spoke to Dean about it yesterday at our staff meeting, The building code has it from, I want to say 6 to 14. That's where, they, like what you're saying, all the safety provisions and all that stuff goes in before it actually becomes a full-fledged nursing home, commercial scale type operation. So that is in this draft ordinance that requires them to meet the fire and building safety codes and do those inspections.
Do our fire and building safety codes require like sprinkler systems within?
That's, I believe so, but I would have to defer to the fire marshal. I do know that in speaking with the permit technicians, every ALF that's come in so far gets reviewed by the fire marshal.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. So because I can't remember how it's treated here in the city, how for existing ALFs that are cited in situations that are similar to the one that we looked at before, this won't affect them, this is only going forward, right?
Yes, moving forward.
Okay. But if they go away, if they ever leave or abandon that use, it goes back to its original zoning,
The
correct?
principal use will still be a single-family home,
Okay.
single-family dwelling.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Sure.
As this relates or overlaps sometimes with rules of HOAs and whether they allow commercial and whether it becomes commercial, in the ones that we've had, we're in a situation where we're asking the applicant frequently, does your HOA have a rule against this? And of course, they say, no. Is it possible as part of your application process to require an affidavit or for the HOA to submit a statement that this is allowed so that we're not just taking someone's word? Is there a way to document that?
I know I've talked with Mike about this before, and we don't want to do that because that is a private thing. The HOA's approval doesn't dictate staff's decision. We only look to get input from the HOA if what the applicant is proposing impacts property owned and maintained by the HOA. So, for example, when we have a fence permit or a wall permit where the wall is in the person's backyard, but it's actually a tract owned by the HOA, and they come in wanting to repair the wall because the HOA is slow towards getting that done, we require the HOA's authorization letter because it's actually on their property. Same thing with recreational amenity centers for subdivisions. The homeowner next door can't pull that application, it would have to be the HOA. So staff's position is that we don't, if they want to provide it, that's great, but because it's not required in our code or in the statutes, we don't have a way of making them do that legally.
Okay. I'm going to try a second bite at the apple. I appreciate that, and I know that it's complicated, and I know we've come a long way from almost 20 years ago when I was told that the city did not recognize HOAs as legal entities. So I appreciate how much you all try to help with that. I do know that the Land Development Code requires notification for, say, lot splits of landowners within 300 feet or something, and frequently HOAs have common areas in that and receive those notifications. Is there anything you could do with that to at least notify HOAs that
Lot
an ALF
splits?
is going in? Yeah, any sort of changes that affect property, you send notices to the property owners in the Land Development Code. And HOAs receive those because they own common area that is frequently in that. So is there, if you can't, I understand you don't want to get across the bridge to, do you allow it? But could we at least receive proper notification that these are going in to give us a chance to take proactive action if we want to?
If I could just be completely honest on the spot, we could try, but the public noticing provision is relative to hearings. So hearings is what triggers us to go through that process of getting the letter, the mailing addresses of everyone. Because of the for one, I don't think lot splits get noticed. Permits don't get noticed. But what I have been trying to put forward is like a project map that has all the major projects. We can certainly make the ALF GIS map available on the city's website, at least to see things in static form. You have to have a password to go in there because we don't want anyone to go in and manipulate the data. But I can talk to Mike about having something static so that it's at least there. What the ALF application for the city does is provide a reservation form. So we can, if, let's say, for example, someone comes in with that application, we update the map to show, to highlight that property. That property has 6 months to get their ducks in a row, their application, their licensing, and things like that. We can provide that, you know, and I'm speaking, and Mike's not here to say yes or no, but that's something that I think we could possibly do, have some sort of stagnant map so that HOAs can just click on it and see, you know, routinely every quarter if that's changed, because then they'll at least know that someone's applied. You know, we don't have a way of, you know, the fees, the cost of publication is paid through the application fee. I think an ad is $360. The application is only $125. So the city would be spending a great deal of resources to notice all of that because they come in. So that's just a thought. Speaking just right now based on that question, but I can certainly talk to Mike about how we could make that information available to the HOA or to the general public. It probably won't be updated, you know, monthly because we don't get quite that many, maybe quarterly. You're
As
welcome.
a follow-up on that, if I may, Mr. Chair? I do know on the application, when they're making changes to a home, that it does have a notice, if I remember correctly, that it says that that this does not supersede your HOA. If you have one, you still have to get their approval. Can that, if it isn't already, be put on the ALF application as well?
I don't know which
Like
application.
if someone comes in and says, hey, I want to put a fence in my front yard, that application that they send into the city has on it a notification, if I remember correctly, that says this doesn't supersede any homeowner association rules. If you have an HOA, you must still go through them. So the city isn't doing anything directly on it. We don't take a stand one way or the other as a city, but it does remind the applicant that there is an HOA. If there is an HOA that's also involved, you must get their approval as well.
To me, and Robin can, as legal counsel, can chime in, I think that that's still sort of a backdoor of what Mr. Kennedy is saying, because I don't think the city should be in a position where you can't do something unless your HOA says yes, because then it essentially gives them the power to be a governing board.
Well,
in my
I think what it
opinion.
does is at least gives them notification that you also, if you still have an HOA that's involved, this doesn't supersede and take away the HOA's, the fact that you need your HOA approval as well. And I think that was, and I'm probably wording it wrong there, and so you might need to take a look at how it is on the application now. But I'm thinking we should be able to put that same type of wording on an ALF application if it isn't already there.
Robin?
I think it's something we should take a look at. I am, at first glance, uncomfortable with it for the reasons that you've talked about already, simply because, you know, certainly we recognize HOAs, but it's not the city's responsibility to make sure that a homeowner notifies their HOA. You know, there may be another way to get this information across, but, you know, it makes me uncomfortable for the city to have any type of responsibility. Once we start saying, putting a notice, you should, notify your HOA, then if for some reason, we don't have the notice or the person doesn't, it just opens a lot of doors. And while I appreciate the goal here, which is to make sure the HOA is aware, I feel like it's not the city's responsibility to do that. But I'd be happy to take a further look at it and see if there is some opportunity similar to what, we're discussing here.
Yeah, because I was going to say, we've already been doing this for quite some time on those applications, and I don't see it as something that says, no, the city still has their final say, and the city can approve it. What happens then is when the HOA gets it back, and the HOA says, well, no, it's, just because the city approved it doesn't mean you're allowed to do it in this community, I think is where you run into issues, where I've seen those issues before, and then all of a sudden, it lands up in court, and the person has to take down whatever they did, because just because the city approved it, your HOA didn't even know about it. And I've seen it in reverse, too, where I've seen people come in and say, well, the HOA approved it, so we put it up. And then the city says, oh, then time out. You still had to get a permit from the city to do that. So I think it was a nice handshake, if you will, between the HOAs and the homeowner associations, that they both remind the applicants whenever they're doing things for changes, that at least it's something that, don't forget, we don't, it's not our responsibility that you do this, but don't forget that it may still be your responsibility to do this.
I would look at it this way, and, first off, and I may be wrong about this, but I don't think I am. We're not actually approving ALFs, right? It's a reservation letter, right? The ALFs are approved by the state. The only thing we're doing is making sure they're coming up to a couple rules, and we're saying those rules are checked, and we're giving them a reservation letter. So technically, we're not approving anything, right? So the way I look at it, right, is also when you look at the stuff we did a couple months ago about the Airbnbs and things of that nature, right? There's not much difference in this and that. And the state legislature has put rules now in place that says you cannot hinder a person to do business in their home, right? And when these ALFs meet certain requirements, at the end of the day, there's really no difference between that and those other type of at-home businesses, right? So, and the other part I would say is I think the onus is not on the city. I think the onus is on the HOAs to start looking at their bylaws. And if they don't want things like this, they need to figure out with their attorneys if it is something that they could do. So, I mean, I don't think we should put any stipulations like that because, again, it's not like getting a permit or getting a fence done or something like that because we're not actually approving these HOAs. So,
I agree.
the ALFs, excuse
I
me.
want to respond to that. I agree with you.
Hang
It's
on
not,
I'm sorry, excuse me. She was about to.
Before we go to something else, I would like to clarify that the way that the statute looks at ALFs is not as a business, but in fact as just residential, and it specifically says it's to be treated as a non-commercial use. So it really is not considered a home-based business. And this is an issue we've just recently taken a look at for another applicant. And because of that, we're in a different situation, even though it's an ALF and an HOA may have their guidelines, that they're looking at. The idea is, just as you said, state law requires that we look at it. They require that we look at it as a residential use and really not treat it any differently. Right. And that's where I start to have concern about if it's an ALF that we're reaching out notifying the HOA. I mean, if you took it and looked at it exactly the way the legislature has prescribed through the statutes, they're saying treat it as residential. So if we did that, then every time someone comes in and wants to build a home, do whatever, we would then be in the position of saying, oh, make sure you talk to your HOA. And I know it's very different in our minds, but under the state law, we have to look at it sort of in a blind way, if you will. And so that's where it took me a while to get my mind understanding that whole, it's a residential use, not commercial.
If I could just clarify, when it comes in, when the application comes in, we put on our letters that they need to go seek appropriate permitting as needed. When we issue the ALF reservation letter, for purposes of ensuring that it gets the proper fire and building inspection, it's routed through the business route, just so that it goes into that path in Sage where the permit technicians can schedule the inspections. That would be the reason why we do it that way.
Understood. I agree, it's just like a B&B. And when you start getting into requiring special fire, special permits, as we just said, you're creating a commercial standard. And there are very, very, very few HOAs, certainly that have been formed since 2004, when the task force was put in place by the governor, that do not have rules banning these. Mine is one. And so there's a presumption, there should be a presumption, generally, a reasonable person should presume that anybody applying for these in an HOA is violating their bylaws and covenants. And so to at least give the HOA a notice of that, to me, seems being a good, responsible neighbor and cooperating, because, as we said, this isn't a fence. It's not a small thing for somebody to go in and say, you have to take down your $500 fence. This is people, we just heard a public safety argument about a sign on a Family Dollar. You have people moved into these residents, to bring them in, for somebody to go out and make a commercial plea, a monetary plea to bring them in and to profit, and then displace those people when it's easily foreseeable that it's not allowed, doesn't seem responsible to me. Just my opinion. Thank you.
I have a question, and I'll pose it to Madam Attorney, and, so kind of what Enoch just said is, zoning manager Whitfield just said is, maybe not, I say we should still not be in the business of, meandering with HOAs in that purview, right? But if through our eyes as the Planning and Zoning Commission and the special exemption, it does need to be taken care of there, but maybe when it's passed off onto the permit side, they do have questions when they come into the building department and on the permit side, where they do ask if it's been approved by the HOA or whatnot. So would that be a different animal, or would it be the same thing pretty much?
I still say that it's something that we should look into. I don't want to say yes or no. If it's something that we can do and that, we feel like it's beneficial, and certainly there's no reason not to. I just want to make sure that we don't run afoul, if you will, of treating an ALF differently than what the state law requires, which is that we treat it as a residence. Even though we may have commercial standards based on, fire and some of those issues, I'd need to understand the reasoning behind how we do this, looking at it from the commercial standpoint, and then compare that to what we're being asked to do here.
Yeah.
It seems like a pretty easy question, but there are a lot of implications, and again, it's what they always refer to as the slippery slope.
Yep.
You start one thing, then you're sliding down, and so with that, I think it's certainly something we should look into and see if it's possible, but, without having an understanding of the reasoning behind the way the laws are written, I'm uncomfortable. And I do know, again, going back, that, the state law particularly says that we are to treat them as residential, non-commercial. I mean, it's those exact words in the statute.
Yep.
So that, to me, makes it very different, even than, say, an Airbnb. But-
I'm sorry, just a minute. Is it then likely that the requirement to
Turn your mic on.
listening to you, I'm persuaded that it's probably inappropriate to require them to meet commercial fire standards.
Well, that's something I would not be prepared to address at this point either.
'Cause you
Mr.
can't put a, for example, you can't put a commercial fire system in a home in an HOA. Clear body.
Yeah, I would say, again, that's way out of our purview. It's way out of our sight line, right? That's,
We can sum it up in, legalese is, negligence isn't a defense. And the city doesn't owe duty to care, period. So there is no reason that the city or anybody should even contact the HOA. They're not a government entity. They're an entity. They're not a person, so this shouldn't even be a discussion. There should be no right to notice an HOA what somebody does within their own covenants. That's the HOA's job to police their own covenants. And again, negligence isn't a defense. If somebody comes here, you're talking about, well, my HOA said, but you're negligent. That's not a defense that they can use or an argument they could use, if that makes sense.
to bring this back to center, then, I think, my personal opinion is I think there are some valid comments about, how you intertwine this with the HOA. I don't think that's our purview this evening, though. So I would say we should approve this the way it sits and say to zoning manager Whitfield, please take our comments back to Mike and figure something out, right? So, in that regard, then I will ask for a motion.
Is this two motions, since it's two?
Actually, hang on,
No,
I need to open the public.
It's one motion for one ordinance.
I need to open the public comments first. Okay, we're gonna close the public hearing. This. We only need one motion for this, so I'll take that now either way.
So, Mr. Chair. I move for approval of the Land Development Code Amendment.
You
As-
recommend?
I recommend
Thank you.
that we move forward with the recommendation of approval for the Land Development Code Amendment as presented by staff. Do I need to say the section?
No, you're good. So we have a motion to recommend for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to recommendation for approval by member Williams and a second by member Mellon. Any other discussion? All right, I would say this is a good idea to get this through. We've already had one that, this table needed to be fixed before it, so, but we will say again to zoning manager Whitfield, please have the conversation with Mike about the comments that have been made here this evening. So we'll go ahead and vote. All right, that's, it did pass 4-1. Do you want to make a comment or anything about your denial?
Sure.
I'll do that. I appreciate the city attorney's comments, and I think I would prefer that to occur first. I'd like to see the research and the diligence. I don't just want to turn this back to Mike and go straight to the commission. Just opinion.
It can always come back to us at any point. All right, cool. So that's done. Miscellaneous, project status report. Anything you want to tell us about?
Well, I have a short list. So just a couple things. All Stars got continued again. Well, for this board, it's already gone past you, but Ocoee Landings, which you had recommended for denial, they're planning their second community meeting to talk with the residents to hopefully try to resolve their concerns.
That's good.
And Ocoee Village Center is underway. I don't know if you've driven by Wellness Park. That construction is underway. I think the decks and all of that is going in. Arden Park Phase 6 is nearing completion. They're probably at about 90, they're about halfway through. Unity Park is underway. The Ocoee Medical Building, the Advent Health, that's about 90% complete. They're in their TCO now. Of course, Sunny's Starbucks is underway, and Inspiration, of course, is also underway. So
You may or may not know but I like to ask Mike this since it's come up. Have you heard anything about the comments about the widening of the 420, excuse me, the turnpike and the 429. Have there been any more comments about that in regards to our two projects that are there?
At our staff meeting Monday, Mike and Ginger both said that the DOT is taking a pause to reevaluate, and one of the suggested reevaluations that they're considering will not have an impact on Alibi.
That's great. But
So-
what about the other one, though?
Regency will still be impacted to some degree.
Yeah, okay. And do you, just by your passing with Dean and with anybody else, have you heard about how the roundabout's going at Lakewood for I forget what we're calling that project, Claricone, Ocoee, and Lakewood, making that new roundabout where the stormwater's going in?
They talked about it this morning, but I was halfway paying attention.
All right,
And you are on record.
Well, I mean, they were on the other side of the table. No, I was in another conversation about another project when they were discussing that, but
Okay.
they did talk about it.
all right. Anything else for staff?
I've got just one question. That's on the Clarkona Ocoee.
Yes, sir.
On the Clark Road expansion. Has that started, or I noticed the signs are down where it was going to start this fall, but I'm not sure I've seen any start on the expansion of Clark Road.
I don't know. I think that's, oh, you're talking about the sign, I'm
Well,
thinking of Clark.
Clark Road is supposed to be widened now, starting at 80 Mims and going to Clarkona Ocoee. And I know they had signs up for a while. The signs have disappeared, but I really haven't seen where they're starting any work on that. And I'm just wondering, has that been pushed back, or?
I don't know. I can't honestly speak to it. I do know that some of the signs, like the Ocoee, Apopka Road, Fuller intersection, those signs were removed prior to the hurricane, but I don't know if those other signs were removed and just haven't been replaced yet. So I'm not sure.
All right, well, we'll see everybody in October. We're gonna go ahead and adjourn it in
November.
November. Somebody didn't update my thing here. We will adjourn at 7:37. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion.
A second? All those in favor? Have a great evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.